walked into my house. Apart from Dr. Prempe, none of you has been to my house. It's open. And so I was sitting there, they said, then somebody has come here. He said he's called Manasseh. And I said, Manasseh who? So I said, let him wait, I'm coming. It was when I was going that my mother said, oh, they say Manasseh is here. My mother knows everybody and everything. I don't know everybody and everything. My mother is 97 years old now. So I walked down and saw this fine young man. And I remember he's the one that had been causing trouble with his English in this country. And we talked. And the first question that I asked him is, have you got security? And he said, no. Then I shook his hand. Because if you have fear, that four-letter word, you can never be yourself. You can never bring yourself out. After all, the person who will kill you will also die. So why should I fear death? You know? And then we fell into talking. Then he gave me the Nketsia. Apparently he was going to marry a daughter of mine. So he came to warn me that he has come into my area to take a woman away. So I said, this boy, I wanted to spank you, but he brought me some drinks. And I sent some people to go and wait. That's my first interaction with this fine young man who, because of him, we are here. Now, a lot of us have been writers. We do write. And there's no way that a writer cannot be subjective. I was looking for one of my good friends here. I remember that when I used to teach at the university. And one of the questions I used to ask my students, and a lot of them were Christians, what did Pilate ask Jesus Christ and how did Jesus answer? Pilate asked me, and I'll say it in Latin because it sounds nicer, quod est veritas? What is truth? And nobody ever raises his hand. They will even go and ask the previous year's class to ask them, because I always put money down. Anybody who answers this question will get this amount of money. I challenge them. And they will all be as quiet as Jesus was, because Jesus did not answer. Because truth is very, very subjective. At the end of the day, it is subjective. So whenever we write, in fact, when I wrote my book and I had my very, very good friend launch it for me, Kwame Ahoy was one of those who read it, the manuscript. I said, Nana, this book is hot. Underlined words, and I realized that some of the words I used came out of a passion, an anger, an emotion at a point of time. I had a manuscript I did in Nigeria. I was very fortunate. I left Nigeria, came to Ghana, had time, and when I started reading it, I said, God, if I had let this thing come out, I would have scarred certain young men that I knew forever. Because I was writing about their fathers. And I couldn't let them carry that burden on them, that scar on them forever. The manuscript is still lying in his shadow, gathering dust. Every Harmattan, more dust gathers, you know. But what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes we get carried away. I've seen journalists write. I was just talking to Dr. Prempe, and I remember that when I was in high school, and it's not in Fansum Senior Secondary School. That is for GS. It's in Fansum School. When I was at Fansum, we read Gap Boys, written by one of my favorite journalists, Cameron Dodu. Whenever I see any article of his, I chase it to read because of what he writes. Ajwa Yabwafe wrote about her father quite recently. It's a book I treasure and I read from time to time. I'm happy that the graphic board, I hope it does well, is being chaired by a very special friend of mine, you know, and so on. But writing is not easy. I've been going around telling whoever I think is who that please write. If you can't write, let others write for you. The first time I've seen Dr. Yahota Maklo, today, and when I shook his hand, I said, I've read your book. I'm sure you were surprised. I picked that from the printer at Cape Coast University and read it, took it home and read it. I saw Dr. Adokufo. I said, have you read it? He said, Go Coast Boy Yoruba. Now it's come out. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten one. Elizabeth Ohini has compiled her, has compiled her editorials, published them. She hasn't sent one to me yet, even though she's promised. But I've challenged Kwame Pianim. Please write, we need you. You know, various people in whatever dimension should write so that we can provide literature for a greater understanding or greater appreciation of the country. So just before I traveled, I've been away from Ghana, interestingly. I don't like living in Skado, how much more Ghana. Just before I left, this young man called me that, one, he's got a very happy baby that he wants to name, and two, he has, I don't know which one is happier, he has another equally happy baby, and that is his third book. I knew that I couldn't be there for the is it christening or the naming ceremony, but for him, I wanted to be there. So I said, this one, I cannot avoid it. So we're all here. I wish this room had been filled in order to encourage young men like this. You know, in journalism, you can't be a journalist without a moral compass. And it's your moral compass that directs you to write. Let me paraphrase one of my African heroes, Nkrumah. He says that the revolutionary journalist, and I'm paraphrasing, cannot write for the oppressed. I mean, you see the oppressor and the oppressed, and you write for the oppressor, then your mind is gone. You see the exploiter and the exploited. Definitely you write for the exploited. You see the corrupter and the corrupted. And who would you write for? And so on and so forth. There's no neutrality. Journalism or writing is not antiseptic. So the 4th John, which I've not read, I'm sure that for those of us who are interested in the country, it is going to be quite interesting for us. A few years ago, I was in Canada. Then I saw a book in the bookshop written by the former president. And I took it. Fortunately, he came to Sekeni and I gave it to him. I said, please sign it for me. So he signed it. But I went and bought it all the way in Canada. Today, there's a book written about him. My only prayer, and I'm sure Dr. Premper would bring this out, that this book is not a panegyric, that it really discusses issues, discusses the man, and from somebody else's, like Manasseh's perspective, brings out who the man is, critically. Most of us write, and it's just a piece of just praises, 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 praises. If I ever write a book about Mato de Misata's husband, I'm sure I'll praise him that he will be wake up from the dead and come and give me a knock, because I love him so much. But that is the whole thing. But Matilda will tell you that I was always on the back of the husband. Right. You have an experience that Ghana needs. Unfortunately, the manuscript is there. Some of us will look for it one day and continue it with our own English. You know, he is Cape Coast English. Mine is Sekendi English. So try to finish it with our own English. But this is the challenge. And for me, my motivation came from my late uncle, who was buried in 1995. He had been through it all from 1938, and yet he didn't write. And that is the disservice. That was a disservice to the country that he loved so much. J. Rollins came to the house, and I told him once, I said, look, what is Kwame Nkrumah? He wrote, and we are still reading Kwame Nkrumah and quoting him. But you, please write. If you can't get a ghost writer, I was fortunate to meet the late Secretary General, Kofi Annan. And I said, how did you do it? Because he wrote 2 books, and he explained how he did it. So most of you, even as young as you are, start writing. Ghana needs your thoughts, not today, for the future to discern what the past has been, so that we may learn from it to build the future. And I'm very happy that this occasion has come up, and they brought a very humble chief like me all the way from Escado to come and chair it. I accept the chair.